In an effort to protect us from greedy debit card companies, big government hopes to pass even more regulations to limit the fees these companies can collect. But as with everything the government does, there are unintended consequences. Instead of protecting consumers, these new regulations are already hurting them. Here to explain how is syndicated columnist Deroy Murdock. Deroy, it's a pleasure. Welcome here.
Good to see you.
All right, so the FinReg, the Chris Dodd, Barney Frank legislation that was debated for months and argued over for a long time that the Congress passed authorizes the Federal Reserve, of all people, to implement regulations that regulate how much credit card companies can charge vendors when they use a debit card.
Correct.
And what happens?
Well, as if the Fed didn't have enough to do already with all the printing of money. Right now, the average charge per transaction on debit cards is about 48 cents. Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois decided that was too much. This constituted excess profits. And he said, no, let's make it 12 cents per transaction.
Okay, before you go further, that's 48 cents no matter how much I spend, whether I buy a sandwich or whether I buy a flat screen TV. If I use my debit card right now, the company that owns the card charges the merchant 48 cents.
That's the average. It could be higher. That's just an average.
Okay,
but rather than just the average, which is a statistical average, now Senator Durbin wants to have a statutory cap of 12 cents.
What happened to that statutory cap proposal?
That's 12 cents. So if you buy a sandwich, it's 12 cents. If you decide to put your brand new car on your debit card, it's still 12 cents. And you can imagine what a unusual situation that creates.
What does that cause the banks to do now? Because they don't have the income that they were accustomed to receiving when large items were charged on the debit cards.
Correct. Their revenue is going to go down because they're not going to be able to get that additional money, 13 cents on up for bigger transactions. So now what they're doing is they are, among other things, reducing the benefits available to debit card owners. I happen to use this card right here. It's a Chase debit card. Right. I got a letter in the mail about 2 weeks ago saying that I no longer will be earning miles on United Airlines, which is the main reason I use this.
And why is that?
Well, again, the idea is that they want to keep Chase from making too much money. And what the unintended consequence is number one, I and many others, millions of others, will not be getting frequent flyer miles, which means if you have a low income and you want to fly across the country, you can't do that with your miles or fewer miles.
Let me get this straight, and maybe you should be asking me this question, but I'm asking you. We have a voluntary transaction here. Voluntary between the purchaser, voluntary between the merchant, and voluntary between the bank.
Correct.
Who the heck is the government to interfere with this voluntary system that worked quite well, Senator Durbin, before you got involved?
It worked very well indeed, and there's no one is doing any of this with a gun to his head. It's none of the government's damn business, and so as a consequence, people who used to get miles through using their debit cards are not going to be getting them, at least in this case. I would get each year roughly the equivalent of one free ticket, which I could use to go visit my parents in California, for example.
Right.
That's evaporated. And what you're really doing is creating an incentive for people not to use their debit cards with their own money, but instead to use their credit cards and get themselves further into debt, which I guess is sort of the Democrat approach to things. Get further in debt and spend money you don't have.
Right. Well, that's the way they run the government. And some Republicans have done that.
And some Republicans, too.
Have done that as well. Has this caused people who use debit cards to lose the privilege of using debit cards?
I don't think there's been a loss altogether, but some people only can get debit cards because they're not able to get credit cards. Their credit isn't that good. They don't have that kind of income.
Right.
And so I think it's to the degree that it makes debit cards less attractive in the overall economy, it'll put pressure on those people. It'll either force them to try to get credit cards, which they can't get, or instead try to look around for debit cards, which may be harder to get in the future. So again,
what is the Federal Reserve, that great bank that nobody can touch or interfere with, can't appeal what they do virtually?
You can't audit them yet.
What are they going to do about it? What are they going to do next?
Well, who knows? I mean, July 12th, the rules are going to come down as to what debit cards can do. I'm sure they'll find some other way to keep themselves very busy.
The law of unintended consequences. Deroy, it's a pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.